Welcome back. Let's go ahead and get started for today's notes. So today we're going to continue solving quadratic roots by factoring instead of graphing. Remember the names, other names for quadratic roots besides roots include x-intercepts, zeros, and solutions. All four terms are talking about the same thing, that when we have a graph, when we have a parabola, where it hits the x-axis, these are our solutions, roots, zeros, x-intercepts. It's where it hits the x-axis. Because it's day 2, it's basically the same idea of what we did yesterday, only the problems are going to be a little bit different from what they look like from yesterday. If you notice, yesterday, all of our problems were in standard form. Today, they're not, so that's going to be a little bit different, as well as when we're setting it up and solving for x. But the steps are the same. So these 3 steps are the same from yesterday. So step number 1, always ensure that the quadratic is in standard form. You should know by now that's ax squared plus bx plus c. Step 2 is factor. Always pull out the greatest common factor. Today that's going to play a little bit of a bigger role than yesterday. And then like yesterday, look at the number of terms. Do we have 2 terms? Are we going to use the difference of squares? Or do we have 3 terms? We're going to use the star snowflake method. Then we're going to do step 3. We're going to set each factor equal to 0 and solve for x. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and take a look at my problem. Right away, step 1, I notice that it's not in standard form, so I have to fix that. So I'm going to go ahead and move 21 over to the other side of my equation. Let me zoom in a little bit for you guys. Draw a line. To move 21 over, I'm going to subtract 21 from this side. This is going to cancel out. And I'm going to have 0. What I do to one side, I'm going to do to the other, minus 21 on this side. X squared, x, and 21, they're not like terms, so I cannot combine them. So I'm going to rewrite the entire form back down next to 0. So I have x squared plus 4x minus 21 equals 0. I'm done putting it into standard form. Now I need to factor. I have 1 for negative 21, and x only appears in 2 of the terms, so I cannot pull anything out at this time. Then I'm going to look at the number of terms. I have 3, so I'm going to use the snowflake star method. Go ahead and put x on the wings, b on the bottom. Make sure you carry that sign over. That's a negative 21. I'm going to put c on top. Now I need to find factors of negative 21. That's negative 1, 21, negative 3, 7, 1, negative 21, 3, negative 7. So here are all the factors of negative 21 that could work, but I need to find one that's going to give me 4. Negative 3 plus 7 is going to give me positive 4. At this point, use your calculators to help you with integers. Let's go ahead and fill in the rest of the snowflake. Minus 3 plus 7. My first factor is x minus 3. My second factor is x plus 7. I'm going to set them both equal to 0. I'm on my third step now. And finally, solve for x. It's an equation, and I'm going to solve for x by using inverse operations. So if I'm subtracting 3, the inverse of that is adding. I'm going to add 3 to both sides. This cancels out. I have x. 0 plus 3 gives me 3. Over here, draw my line. The inverse of adding 7 would be to subtract 7 from both sides. I'm going to cancel this out. X equals negative 7. Finally, put your numbers, put your answer, your solution set into those fancy brackets. I have X equals, here's your fancy brackets, 3, then negative 7. That is my answer for the very first problem. Let's go ahead. Because some of these problems are going to look a little bit different, today I'm going to go ahead and go through all 4 problems. Now, if you want to, you can pause and skip ahead and see if your answer matches what I have here. If you prefer, go ahead and finish this video with me. It'll take maybe about 7 more minutes. And make sure that you pause so that you're copying everything down and that you're spending more time listening to how I'm explaining how to do this than writing. Make sure that you pay attention and listen to the steps that I'm going through. Okay, let's go ahead and go over the very first problem. It's not in standard form. I have equals 7x. I know it's not in standard form. I want to move 7x back over to the left-hand side. I want to set it to 0. In order to do that, I'm going to subtract 7x. Since this has an x, when I move it over here, I'm going to write it underneath the 5x. It's a common term. That would make it a lot easier for me to simplify. So I have negative 7x. What I do to one side, I do to the other, and I wrote it underneath its common term. This cancels out. I have 0. Bring down the equal sign. Nothing's happening here. That stays the same. Negative 5 minus 7 is going to give me negative 12. Bring down my variable. And x squared stays the same. If you're having an issue finding that to be a negative or negative 12, use your calculator to help you. That's minus 5. Sorry. That's going to be negative 5 minus 7. Use your calculators to help you with integers. All right, so I take a look. I have 1, 12, 64. I don't have a common term there. Excuse me, a common factor there. And x squared, x is only happening in 2 of them, so I can't pull that out either. So I don't have a greatest common factor to pull out. So I look at the number of terms. I have 1, 2, 3. I know it's going to be the star method. Put your x on the wings. B is going to go on the bottom. 64 is going to go on top. So I want to find factors. Oops, there should be negative 64. There we go. I need to find factors of negative 64. I know 8 times 8 is going to give me 64. Since it's negative, one of them have to be negative. And I know this won't work because negative 8 plus 8 is going to give me 0, and I need it to be negative 12. 2 other numbers, let's see, I know negative or 16 times 4 is going to give me 64. One of that has to be negative. I can just put the negative on the 16. Negative 16 plus 4, use your calculator to help you out. That's going to give you negative 12, and that is what I want. So I'm going to use these factors, negative 16 and 4. Here are my 2 factors, x minus 16, x plus 4. I'm going to set them both to 0, and I'm going to move on to my third step. I'm going to solve for x, set up my line, use inverse operations to add 16 to both sides. 0 plus 16 is going to give me 16. Over here, drag down my line. I'm going to subtract 4 from both sides. I'm going to cancel this out. X equals negative 4. So you find x. Put it into your fancy brackets. X equals 16, negative 4, and complete your fancy brackets. That's the first example.